How should we react when life seems to be full of unpleasant surprises, when we find ourselves on the receiving end of knocks and setbacks, things which we hoped would never come our way? This present time may well be viewed in that light, isn't that so? And I'm sure that we all want, as far as we can, to be responding in what the Bible tells us is the Christian way. Now, with that in mind, I want us to take us yet again into Romans chapter 5 in order to look at a couple of verses which may well be helpful for us in providing a Christian response. I have in mind verses 3 and 4 of Romans chapter 5. Paul has just said that we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. And then he continues from verse 3. More than that, we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Now, to be honest, we probably don't find those two Bible verses comfortable reading. And you may be thinking, today's Bible thought doesn't sound all that comforting. So may I say, please do carry on listening, because there is assurance to come. In fact, the whole of Romans chapter 5 was written by Paul to strengthen Christian assurance. The word sufferings is often translated as tribulations. So while it's true that the Christian believer is not immune from aches and pains, fears and frustrations, deprivations and disappointments, what is most in view here is the opposition and persecution of a hostile world. Jesus warned his disciples, "In the world you will have tribulation." But he immediately went on to say, "But take heart, for I have overcome the world." Taking that verse as a whole, John chapter 16 verse 33 may help us to get the right perspective. Paul and Barnabas, on their return journey through towns where they planted churches during their first missionary journey, strengthened the souls of the disciples and encouraged them to continue in their faith, saying that through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. It may be that in God's mercy we are not called to suffer tribulations, but at the very least we should be prepared for it, and we should not be surprised at the way increasingly it can cost Christians a lot to stand up in their workplace or among their friends and make it plain that faithfulness to Christ is more important than political correctness. Agencies like the Barnabas Fund highlight some of the persecution that Christians in many countries of the world face today. Why then should we rejoice in sufferings, in tribulations, as and when they arise? Well, in the end, whatever opposition there may be on the way, our Christian life leads to glory. That's what Paul has said at the end of verse 2. And in the meantime, on the way, it leads to maturity. It produces endurance, which in turn produces character, which in turn produces hope. We admire endurance, don't we? And I guess that we all long to be more and more those who do endure. But the truth is that we cannot learn endurance without suffering, because without suffering, there is nothing to endure. Endurance produces character, and that's the quality of a person who has been tested and has passed the test. Gold, apparently, real gold, shines underwater. You know if it's the real thing by submerging it. And real faith shines when there is opposition and is proved to be genuine. A great Christian evangelist who has now died used to be invited every year to the annual meeting of a church organisation of which he was a member. And every time he went, when he got up to speak, he was opposed. People got really nasty. It became so bad that each year, about a week before he was due to go to that meeting, he used to come out in a rash because of the nervous tension. On one occasion, he simply couldn't face it, and he went to the meeting, but he walked out of it. He just left the meeting, and he was sitting outside, totally dejected. And a friend of his came up to him and said, "Look, what's the matter?" And he replied, I just can't face going into that meeting. I'm opposed the whole time. And his friend said, it's a privilege to suffer for Christ. Go back in there and fight. And so he did. And Paul writes here, we rejoice in the hope of the glory of God. More than that, we rejoice in our sufferings. Yes, they will lead to glory in the end. And in the meantime, they will lead to maturity. They will lead to endurance, character, and hope. And that hope is the certainty of the future glory.